So today I want to speak about spiritual pressure and relaxing into being ourselves. So in this a lot of information age, there's a lot of content on all platforms around spirituality and awakening and consciousness, especially because of the very materialized catalyst we saw in 2020. Many people are now looking within, looking at their values, looking at their morality, kind of really looking at the fibers of society and the fibers of themselves. Maybe not everyone is, but more people than ever are really considering themselves. And there's a plethora of online information around consciousness and spirituality, the awakening journey, what I love to call remembrance. And I guess I want to share that because of this, because there's so much information outside and there's so many ways that people are like kind of holding this image of being awakened or having done the work or being embodied, whatever that means, and for however it shows up in the different fractals and sects of what it means to be in this process of awakening. I feel like there can be a lot of spiritual pressure that comes to life. There can be a lot of comparison and a lot of like, this is the way, and this means that you are woke and this means you're not woke, or whatever, however the terminology and whatever the aspects are of this. And it can create a lot of pressure of like ideas of how we're supposed to be. And while I do feel like we are on this journey together and that we can be inspired and influenced in a beautiful and expansive ways, I feel like it's so important to know that the core of any awakening is to be ourselves, to really go into the intimate spirals of our own being and remember the inner authority, the autonomy, and the sovereignty of our inner voice and our inner being. And there are external guides and voices and experiences that can support us to spiral inward. But there's so many times that actually what happens is we kind of project our insecurities and we make it feel as if we're separate from, like, this is the way a limiting belief or the way our ego construct can operate is, this is why I'll never be good enough, worthy enough, awake enough, this enough, that enough. Like, I always need to change myself. And that is one of the paradoxes of the awakening journey, in that we are already whole, divine, and healed beings already right now within this present moment. There's nothing to change, do, or improve upon. And yet the paradox is we have been conditioned into such deep layers of trauma, scarcity, lack, that we have to reprogram our belief systems and heal ourselves. And this healing process is just a remembering of our original core nature. And it really is just like in a release and kind of letting these stories, you think of like tubes of water, like the way energy flows. The energy is used to flowing through certain veins and channels, and we just simply have to let that energy flow out and no longer go into these like trauma systems, and just let the energy and awareness instead go into wholeness and love systems. And this is a process of healing. This is a process of remembrance, and also is just kind of being in the origin flow of our existence. So this has come up a few times recently, and it's come up for like this sort of awareness has been present for me, whether I'm like in many different directions. And I know for myself, like, my no is really important, like that boundary of like, no, this is how I am. Like, something that came up for me personally actually back in the day is around women, this idea of being like an empowered like goddess being, like the ideas of what that means. And I never felt like that idea. And sometimes women would say certain things to me about, oh, maybe I'm too like reserved or quiet or shy. Like, people would say different words to me. And there's one point in my life where I took that in and I was like, oh, maybe I need to try out some like tantra course or something to like be more embodied. And that really just wasn't it. The way I am in my femininity and womanhood is completely whole and perfect, and it has nothing to do with how anyone else defines being in their womanhood at all. like no. That's like where my no comes in. And that's when like certain ideas of like culture and society, even a spiritual culture and society, can make one question themselves. And there's also been experiences when maybe a sort of that sort of reflection, like not in that vein, but I can't really think of another, but reflections or comments can be really supportive to the parts of us that are still in development in some ways. So there is no right answer. I mean, there really isn't, because anything can be true at any moment. But I guess I'm just sharing the fact that people are like this. So just bringing to awareness that people are feeling spiritual pressure to be a certain way, and that may or may not have anything to do with you, and to really practice your discernment, your no, and loving yourself more than an idea outside of yourself, and feeling and conditioning, remembering, like using the thought patterns and beliefs that you are worthy exactly as you are in this moment. And that might mean you love meditating. That might mean you don't enjoy meditating. That might mean you eat meat. That might mean you don't eat meat. But your worthiness is not contingent on these details. It's contingent on like how much you know and trust your own body, because if anything is true, is that we are all different, and that we all need different things to thrive. And we just need to be patient in finding the mechanisms that bring us into our own divine flow, and allow us to recognize that we are universal flow, and not compare because of someone else's flow. Be inspired, and maybe there's something in there for us, but to really know that no one can really know as much as ourselves, and to really practice that in intimacy and enjoyment and in pleasure, and to enjoy the process of discovering what does it mean for us to be in our soul flow. I feel I'm complete. I don't think there's anything else I have to say. That all kind of came out in words, and yeah, I feel like that's it. So I just encourage you to be you. Oh yeah, so this ascension thing, this awakening thing, this thing that's happening, it's like actually real and it's happening right now, is just to be yourself. Like that is the response, is to know and to love ourselves. And that's ever changing. I mean, we're so mutable, experimental, exploratory beings, and to just enjoy the process of knowing yourself, and then like that knowing always extending. There's this, I remember in anthropology in university, they said if this is knowing and then this is like not knowing, the circle above it, like the more one grows, the more the other grows. And so as we expand both in consciousness and unconsciousness. And that doesn't have to be a lower and upper experience. That can just be like how many more fibers and details of interdimensional, multidimensional, infinite awareness we can be conscious of. But then that's like how much more of infinity is there still left to discover, and that we won't know. And that not knowing doesn't mean we don't embody ourselves in joy. Like not knowing is a part of embodying yourself in joy. Yeah. So much love to you. I hope this lands in your experience in a beautiful, beautiful way. Connect soon.